Hey everybody, it's Libby. I'm back on the WootRecruit YouTube channel. So, what is WootRecruit? Well, we are a recruiting process designed specifically for the high turnover industry. So, if you're in lawn care, cleaning, whether it's residential or commercial, we are the go-to solution for you. So, we have a great guest today. Corey, introduce yourself, and we're going to jump right into some recruiting solutions or strategies that you can help our listeners with.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm Corey Bettinghouse, Reno, Nevada. Corey's Lawn Service, super creative and original name. We are a lawn maintenance company that we currently have about 57 employees on. So recruiting all the time, nonstop, over and over again, day after day, to be able to do that. And that's kind of what we do.
So I always start off with the same question to all of our guests, but what is the number one recruiting mistake that that sticks out? Like, what is that? It could be like one actual event, or it could just be like a lesson you learned the hard way.
I would say, I would say it boils down to I'm so desperate. I need somebody. This person has a pulse and a driver's license. So they're hired. Like, even though everything about your gut is saying, I don't know, wasn't the greatest interview. Oh, it looks like they've had all these turnovers. It looks like, they said this one thing that I didn't like in the interview, but I need somebody real bad and they got a nice smile. So let's hire them. That always comes back to bite you in the butt. And the other one is I have not had a firing that I've regretted. So don't be scared to fire somebody.
Why do you think that we're scared to fire?
It's what does the next day look like? Is it, well, now that means I'm on the truck. That means but he came over with this guy and I'm afraid if I fire him, then so-and-so is going to quit. I think it's just a lot of just fake fear that we create in our head and all these extra scenarios that just like you'll just figure out like 50 scenarios in your head that like probably not a single one is actually going to happen. But each one of those always comes as a negative realization of like, well, if I fire him, here are all the consequences that could happen, when you don't realize that it's actually a huge freedom that could come from firing a bad apple.
Yeah, 100%. So, the first one you described was, hiring that person with a pulse, anyone who walked through the door. How did you or your team kind of figure your way out of that? What did you guys start to focus on? What did you look for?
Yeah, well, I think, big key, and obviously I know WootRecruit's been a huge help to us. Like, I mean, whatever your process is, but I mean, we use WootRecruit, gosh, I want to say 3 years now. And so you've got to have the pipeline filled. And I remember actually a diagram you used, I think on one of our calls back in Academy, where it was showing that funnel of like, you took it over a year, right? Like we had 1,000 people come in and then 500 actually showed up for an interview. And then these ones had a second year, and it gets all the way to the bottom, which equaled 8 employees for the entire year. So it's like, if you can like actually realize that, like, to get somebody quality, that's not just somebody with a pulse and a driver's license, it takes a lot of people in that pipeline. So once you can fill that pipeline in, you're continuing to recruit, you're continuing to interview. Like, I've had multiple times where team be like, oh, well, we're full, we don't need any. I was like, I don't care. Like, you've got 4 more interviews tomorrow, because like, this is what we do. And they have finally come on board, like after like 2 years of doing it, like, oh, I see why we interviewed November through February when we weren't hiring anyone, because you might have 300 interviews during that time. And you call all those people in March when you're about to start. And guess what? You might get 3 of those, of the ones that you really liked. And 3 is better than 0, and those are all people that you felt were A players, because you spent the time always interviewing, always checking in on them and making sure your pipeline was full. So that was the pipeline full on interviews is the key, because if not, and you're just posting I mean, I don't even know if they use Craigslist anymore for job, but I'm sure
No,
they do.
no.
It's been so long. Like you, oh, well, I'll put this Indeed ad up, and you don't have a process that's going to go through it and something that's consistent. Then you're going to, as soon as you hire that person, you're going to stop doing the interviews, and then you're going to wait until that problem comes. And then it might be more problems you like. And then you're scrambling, where it should always be part of your process, especially if you're trying to, in a high turnover area, like always be interviewing and filling that pipeline of interviews.
I love that. I think one of the biggest mistakes that owners make is that we don't allow the time for our office managers or our HR managers or whoever's doing the hiring to like incorporate it in the day to day. It's kind of like, oh, we need to hire someone. I need you to go do this. And sometimes they're looking at it like it's a nuisance because they have their regular day stuff they need to do. And I think we failed, as entrepreneurs to really put a spotlight on that how important is it really, and carve out that dedicated time. Like they're doing it the same day, every day, same time. They have that funnel filled. I think it's so important because we hear that with WootRecruit a lot when we work with the office managers is that, they're just looking at it like it's a nuisance, but I understand it because of the way like their structure was set up within the business. So I really want, if you're an owner, make sure that you're allowing your OMs, your office managers, your field managers to have some structure in their day so that this is part of their day, not just an add-on on top of everything else they have to do. Because then they're not going to give great interviews. They're not going to take the time. They're not going to get engaged to build that bench. And I love that. We actually just came out with a brand new calculator, and I'll make sure that it goes in the show notes of what Corey just said. If I have this end revenue goal, how many people do I even need to apply then to show up to an interview every month, every week, so that I can hit my revenue goal? Because most of us just put revenue goals and say, I need this many leads, but we don't take into account the number of people we need. So we just made a new one. We had an old one. We made an even better one. We haven't actually released it publicly yet. That's probably why no one has seen it, but I'll make sure we put it in the notes. But I absolutely love that topic. And then going from there, how did you inject, because we just talked about culture on the Fearlessness podcast. So pop over there and listen to that. And how did you then see that now that Always Recruiting? How are you guys injecting that culture into that process?
So I might have missed some of that if it might gotten skipped, but one more quick thing was, how do we inject the culture?
Into your recruiting process and your retention, because we go from being desperate to now we have a process, but now how do we really shine a light on that culture? You call it tennis, right? Is your culture. And then how do we see that in people?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's where, and it's also been cool to like get to a different spot now where people are coming in, and it's even one of our questions. Like, so what do you know about Corey's Lawn Service? Like we're asking them, like we're qualifying, and people will come in and they're just like, oh no, I've been on your website. I see your trucks everywhere. I actually, I bumped into one of your employees and they said that they love working there. So it made me want to come in. Like I've just like looked at your socials, like any of this stuff. It seems like it's really cool from an outside perspective coming in. And I mean, that stuff, it takes time. Like you can't flip a culture overnight. But then we just really keep a lot of that stuff, in employee focused. And I know that sometimes people are like, oh, that's not what my employees want. That's not what they want to do. But man, it could be the smallest things of just even, messages on people's birthdays that are on our group chats, like acknowledging people's birthdays or work anniversaries, getting them a little something. Like, I mean, we also get like lottery tickets, like for, just compliments that come in and celebrating with public praise. We do once a month, culture, like we do a once a month activity. And like some people have things to weigh in. We're actually, for the month of July, we're going to go do a river float because they thought that sounded like a lot of fun. We'll do barbecue. That does sound like fun. We went to we got a minor league AAA baseball team. We took them all out to go do that. And so, I mean, it's part of our budget now, like is a huge part of that to just be able to say, hey, like we want to acknowledge either who you are, like, I mean, for a birthday, not just that, but if if it's your birthday and you've worked here for at least 30 days, like you get a full day's worth of pay, even if you're going to work it. If you want to take it off, great, but we're always going to pay you for your birthday. Like, we just feel like that's just a good prize, a good, and then, yeah. And like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's treating people like human beings. Like, how would they want to be treated? And really acknowledging how they do that. And so that what that's really cool is like, we do that internally and as a regular, and like, even that's trickled now to our applicants seeing it, right? Where they see our videos, or they see things that we've done, or they just even walk through the office and how they're greeted and how, the interview is going to go. And they're like, wow, this actually seems like a decent place. Like, I'd really enjoy getting a shot. So then they get excited, not just, I need a job.
Absolutely. I love that, because I don't think enough of us share what we are doing internally. I don't think we're sharing it enough externally, because that's what's going to attract great quality applicants that really fit your culture. Because when we go to look at other people's social media sites and websites, we see a lot of stock pictures. We see a lot of stock images. And I think that really that can hurt our company, because if they really knew who you were and what your people looked like and what you did for them, that would attract the right fit people. I mean, when I walk into an interview, I don't do any interviews anymore, but when I walk into the office and they're doing interviews, the people applying think that they know me, literally, because of all the videos that we do and all the stuff we share. You're like, you're that lady always that wears a hat in orange, because in Fort Myers, I wear orange all the time. And I'm like, yeah. She's like, oh my God, I saw your videos. And they look. So if you think that your applicants, right, your potential candidates are not researching you, they are. And so if you have a great job ad, but it doesn't convey to your social media sites and your website and then your reviews on Google, if your customers are not saying, oh my God, I loved Winter, I loved, Jim, they were amazing. If they're not saying those words, it's not going to resonate with them.
Yeah.
So
it was crazy even last week. No, I agree. And that's where, and I mean, it just shows you, like, I love the times where you actually feel or you hear from an outside thing, not just like an employee's mouth. They're like, oh my gosh, we're doing it right. We went to the Elks Lodge, got invited by some friends, and they got a community pool here. And so we were hanging out there, went up to the snack shack to go get like my kids like a grilled cheese sandwich. But I had a Corey's Lawn Service hat on, and the gal that was in there, teenager, and she's just like, can I get a name for the order? I'm like, oh, it's Corey. And she's like, of Corey's Lawn Service? I'm like, what? Come on. Like, you're, 18 years old. She's like, my friend works for you and he loves his job. And I'm like, it just makes you just want to you're like, crap, we're doing it right. We're doing a good thing. And it's awesome to hear that.
And at the end of the day, it's not that hard, right?
Yeah.
It's not that hard to treat people like human beings, to do a little bit of something. One thing that Corey said that I'm not sure if our listeners caught was he has a budget for these things. So, whether the quarter, I don't know when this is getting released, but it's almost the end of this quarter. So make sure that you're creating a budget so that these things are intentional. You're planning ahead of time. You're preparing. So we take all our staff out and organize it every quarter to a nice restaurant for like 3 hours. They get to eat whatever they want. And we do our quarterly meeting, like all staff meeting in a restaurant. And they just love it. It's one of those things where they break bread together. They talk to each other. They have a good time. Sometimes they get a little out of control. I got a rowdy bunch of cleaners, and but they look forward to it every quarter, because if we don't do it or we're late, like with rolling it out, they ask, when's the quarterly? Where are we going? Like, I went to this great restaurant and they have a private room. And they're looking forward to it. But that's the thing we do. It's intentional. So make sure you create a budget, because if you have that on your line item every quarter, when you look at your expenses, you already know you should be preparing for the next one. And that way they're planned, they're not last minute, and they could be cheaper because you have time to negotiate and research and look.
Oh yeah. That's super helpful. Like, yeah, if you pre-plan it, like we get at the beginning of our year, like tentative, off season's a little bit more. It might just be like, just hey, we're going to do this meal or we're going to do something. But usually from March all the way through November, December actually, because we have our Christmas, we go all out Christmas party, presents, and we do this this great white elephant thing. We do a Thanksgiving meal because we realize that a lot of our employees don't have families that they're going to, or they've just never really experienced. It might just be a different cultural thing, right? Like they just are not like, well, we don't really do Thanksgiving, but you're like, well, let us give you that experience of what like the traditional like American Thanksgiving is like. So like our office, everyone gets in and kind of potlucking, but we'll cook the turkey and the ham and we do it all at the shop. And it's just, and that one is like people get up and give some toast and speech. And so that is like, we put that throughout the year of like, this is the events we're going to do. Here's a couple open months that maybe last year was a flop on the event. And like, if you've got any suggestions, then like, let's put it in and we'll get prices for it, So yeah, it's definitely, that's been huge, building that culture. And then that goes out. And especially if you can invite their families to some of those, I know that gets an extra cost, but that could be just going and doing a picnic at a park, and then you've just provided more food, but you didn't have to pay for a venue or things like that, where the family gets to come and they get to be like, oh, that's your boss. Oh, that's your manager. And they actually get the hands-on experience. And, I can get out there and throw a football with one of the guy's kids, and like that's that impact that goes beyond just, the normal 9 to 5 work hours or whatever.
One of the greatest things that we did for Organize It, we didn't do it last year, we did it the year before, but instead of buying the employees gifts, we were sneaky and we started to ask questions about their kids and what their kids wanted without them really realizing, and just in general conversation. So what we did was we bought every one of our employees' kids Christmas gifts, and it was the gifts that they had asked for or wanted. So it's like they wanted a bike, they wanted a certain doll.
Cool.
And because we did it ahead of time, we were able to like look around and budget and get deals. And it was amazing because they showed up and we had bikes and tricycles and like, you name it, we had it there. But with that type of preparing and planning, you can do it without it costing you a fortune.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the greatest Christmas parties that we have ever had. And guess what? They didn't care that they didn't really get a great gift like in the years past. They actually appreciated the gifts that we gave them from their kids or for their kids more than the gifts we've given them in the past.
That's so cool. I mean, that takes some time, but those are the things that is a gift that will always be remembered, and those are the things like, I mean, we talked about books earlier with the other one, but like the book Giftology was also a great one where you just kind of get this sense of like, what is a great gift? Like what will provide impact that somebody will remember, even for years to come, whether that is a marketing and trying to do business or literally a life impact. And that's a life impact where it's just like, no, the best boss, somebody's like, who's the best boss you ever had? Like, that is a good chance. You're like, well, why is that? Well, there was this Christmas that they learned what my family needed. And it might be in that scenario. Like, we couldn't afford it, but my kid was so set on this thing. And my boss went and bought that thing for my item. And that will live with me the rest of my life. That's so cool.
It was great. And with the book Giftology, if you guys haven't read it, it's great. As a service company, it's kind of hard to give some of those $1 zillion gifts, but the ideas are great.
Yes.
The ideas are great, but here's another thing that you guys can do with intention is when you onboard someone, like we have an about them survey, and we're asking them their favorite stores, their favorite color, their favorite chips, their favorite drinks, favorite restaurants, so that when we do things, we have intention with what we're doing. We're not just like, all right, we're having another party, go buy some random stuff. We're like, oh no, we're going to get this because so-and-so likes this, or it's their birthday. Like, let's go get them this kind of soda because that's what they like. And it's the details that matter that they're going to remember because it's not so generalized anymore. And that's a simple onboarding survey that you can make in Google Forms, then dumps it into a spreadsheet. So you can have like an ongoing list of those core favorites, everything from colors to stores to restaurants to how many kids do they have to how old are they. It's super great and insightful information. It's also going to help you really make a connection with that employee right from the start.
Yep. That's so good. That's really good stuff, Libby.
All right. So we're up on time. We're just at about 20 minutes. I have to let Corey go. So I want to thank Corey so much. Loved seeing you grow. Loved, I kind of miss that we don't hang out anymore. We used to be in the same mastermind group, but gosh darn, Jonathan Potoshnik closed it down. Waiting for him to open another one, but not holding my breath.
We'll see. I know.
We'll
If
see.
not, it'll have to be at an EO event. Yeah.
Or at an EO event. Yeah. So guys, that's a wrap on today's episode. Again, I'm Libby. It was a pleasure, Corey, having you on, guiding us through some effective strategies when it comes to recruiting, not just like recruiting, but recruiting with intention for culture and retention. And if you guys think that hiring is a myth, or it is a myth and you can't figure out how to understand it, there is reality within reach. Just stay tuned for more insights and strategies. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can get notified when we drop our next video. Until next time, keep pushing those boundaries of what you thought was possible with your recruiting process.